Thank you very much, and it's an honour to be here today. And I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and also Indigenous and non-Indigenous people here today. Thank you very much for that introduction. I'll go into a little bit of detail about myself and tell you a little bit about my journey. So hopefully, some things that I've been through, maybe you can relate to, or maybe can, help you with something that maybe you're experiencing at the moment, or maybe something that you experience in the future as well. So I'm a Dunghutti man from the mid north coast of Kempsey. From my great grandmother's from Cabbage Island. So I also have Bundjalung ties as well. I was born in Sydney, but at the age of 2 I moved back to Kempsey with my family, and then moved down to Perouse when I was 5, and I've lived in Sydney ever since, barring my time obviously in Melbourne and the Gold Coast. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. So I was obviously born with an Indigenous grandmother, full Indigenous grandmother, and a non-Indigenous grandfather. And from my mother's side, my mother was actually adopted, so we're not too sure exactly her heritage or where she came from. But she was brought up basically with a German family. Growing up, I grew up in Perouse, in Adina Way, and the mission out in Perouse. And my first team I played for were the Perouse Panthers. So I, growing up on a mission, being a light-skinned blackfellow as well, did have its obstacles, and did have its. It was a little bit hard to understand for myself too. Seeing my family who were predominantly dark-skinned, and growing up in a community where everyone was black. I'd always had a real strong tie of being a blackfellow, but to other people, especially non-Indigenous and Indigenous. To some non-Indigenous people I was looked to as Aboriginal, and some of my Indigenous brothers I was looked to as a white fella. So it was a little bit tough growing up to get that identity. So I had to find that identity within myself, and I was very lucky that I had a very strong leader in my nan. I don't know if anyone knows my nan, Beau Champion, who worked as an Aboriginal education officer at Long Bay Jail for 20-25 years. She's one of the first Indigenous women to complete a university degree in this country, and basically she was a leader, both for myself and for our people and our people back home as well. So I got a really good connection to who I was, where I come from. Every holidays I'd go back to Kempsey and mingle with a lot of my family and a lot of my relatives from up there. Do everything that we used to do, with everything that our past elders used to do. Go fishing, hunting, spend time with family, sit around and yarn, and that really built me and made me who I was. And I think that helped me throughout my journey of becoming a rugby league player. I grew up predominantly with a single mother, so I was raised with a single mother. Spent most of my childhood through Department of Housing, and I think that's again something that instilled a lot of toughness in me, and made me who I was again. And it made me see a lot of things before a lot of other people would have seen a lot of things. So in the communities that were around, obviously you can understand there was a lot of domestic violence, drug use. So it taught me to be a man a lot earlier than what I had to be, and take my own responsibilities to create a life where I didn't want to go for this anymore. I wanted to get out of that life, and the only way to get out of that life was for rugby league. And at a young age I used to just play rugby league, and I love rugby league. We played every day, we played at school, we played lunchtime, we played after school, and I seen rugby league as a way to escape that life, and to make something for myself, make something for the people around me, and also to hopefully show other people that are going through it that they can take that step, whether it be for rugby league or for something else, to better their lives. So I struggled a little bit during my public school days. So out of Perouse I was suspended a few times. I was hanging around the wrong crew, and actually at the time the teacher said, look, if he doesn't change schools or anything, he'd probably have to expel him from this school. Luckily at the time, myself and my mum moved away from Perouse and to Coogee, It's actually funny, well, not funny, but it's actually a bit of a weird situation. But I used to hang around with 3 other kids at the time, and when I was doing a thing for South Kids, we used to go to jail every year for NAIDOC week. And the first time I walked in, actually, the three of them blokes were actually in Long Bay jail at the time. And at the time, it sort of hit me like, wow, you know, if I didn't go down a different path or make some different decisions, that could have been me standing there as well. So changed schools, you know, went to Chifley Public School, started to really learn, understand, you know, behave a lot better. It was then at year 6 that I had to make a decision as to what high school I went to. And that was probably the biggest decision, the biggest turning point in my life as to where I wanted to go and what I did. So there was an opportunity that came up at Endeavour Sports High, which was out at Caringbah. So at the time we didn't have a car, so it would have been a bus, a train, and a bus to school every day. So about an hour and a half every day. But they had a targeted sports program out there, rugby league, to go out there and actually do rugby league full time. You still go to school, you do your normal stuff, but one of the periods is actually based around rugby league and sport. So my mum very supportive, you know, basically pushed me into it. I didn't want to do it. She pushed me into it and said, you got to do this, you got to do this. And I ended up going out to school there, and I met a leader of ours, Jeff Hardy. I don't know if anyone knows Jeff. He's involved a lot with the Clontarf organisation now. But he was the teacher at the time, the rugby league teacher. And he was also, you know, a leader for a lot of the young Indigenous kids that were out there at the time. So that basically started me on my rugby league journey. I was fortunate to come through the ranks at South, through the 15s, 16s. I picked up my first NRL contract at 16 and played my first NRL game at 18 years old. At a time where South Sydney were, you know, considered a bit of a laughing stock of the competition. I was thrown in at a young age because they didn't have basically, there was the only option was just to throw young juniors in like John Sutton, myself and Nathan Merritt, and again just learn the hard way, you know, get flogged 50-0. I remember we got beat 62-0 by the Warriors one game, but again it was a bit of adversity, but it made us tougher, and we sort of all had the same vision that one day, you know, things would change, and if we kept working hard, you know, ultimately we'd put ourselves in a position where we could compete every week, and where our dreams as young kids, the 3 of us, was to win an NRL Grand Final. And myself and Nathan especially were very heavily involved with the community at the time. So I'm actually an ambassador with South Cares and also an ambassador at Kari, who actually work with Out of Home Care, the biggest out of home care provider for Indigenous kids in the country. We didn't just want to be rugby league players. We knew we had an obligation back to the community, back to young Indigenous kids, and back to young kids in general in our community, to go out and mentor them, you know, show them that there is a better way, that there are options, and you know, we're very proud that we did do that. In regards to the rugby league, thankfully, unfortunately, it's a funny story. I actually rang Greg one day because Russell had asked me to ring him to come to the club at the time. So I did that. He said no, he wasn't interested, so I went to Brisbane. And then 2 days later he was at training. So he come training for a couple of weeks, and I sort of sat around and I thought to myself, well, I play in the centres. We've got 3 other centres here, and now Greg's here. So I thought something's got to bite here. And at the time I was probably on more money compared to the other guys, and I kept hearing in the papers that they had to make way for somebody. So I got a tap on the shoulder and said, look, unfortunately we really want to keep you, but we need to get rid of a player, and you're the bloke that fits, you know, perfectly real. So I went to Melbourne, had a great time down there. We finished minor premiers that year. We unfortunately got beaten again to go to the grand final, but again it was a really big experience. Again, it was another obstacle, another adversity that I had to go through at the time. And I think that that's sort of the thing that maybe throughout my journey was that, and probably throughout everyone's life, is we're going to keep facing obstacles or adversity, but it's about how we respond to them obstacles or adversity that basically will lead us to the next path. And I believe that everything happens for a reason. So at the time when I went to Melbourne, I actually signed with Melbourne. I signed a 3-year contract, but I really hated Melbourne. I didn't like the weather. I'm really a coastal person, so whenever I'm not near the coast or whenever I'm outside of where I feel like I need to be, I don't know, spiritually or around my family, I really struggled, and I really struggled for probably 9 months while I was in Melbourne. So I signed a 1 year deal there with a 2-year option, but after probably 8 weeks, I went to Craig Bellamy and said, I can't do this anymore. You know, I need to be back close to my family, back home. I don't care about the money, if we're going to win or not. I wake up every day and I don't enjoy getting out of bed. And he understood, and I went to the Titans, which I loved it up there, but I went for a lot of injuries. And then ultimately, again, everything happens for a reason, and you know, I took that, you know, that I sacrificed. When Greg signed too, I knew it was the best thing for the club, and I knew it was the best thing for us to be able to win the premiership. At the time, we only made the 8 one time in probably 5 or 6 years, and it was going to bring a lot of hope and a lot of, you know, joy to the community. So when I did leave with no regrets, because it wasn't like I was dirty on them because they tapped me on the shoulder or did this, did that. I left knowing that because I'd left, they were going to be put into a better place, and it all worked itself out. 2 years later, I was back at South in 2013, and then I was part of the squad in 2014 that won the grand final. So, yeah. Unfortunately, again, I faced a bit of adversity that year as well. In round 2, we beat the Roosters in round 1. Round 2, we played Manly up at Central Coast. I landed on my wrist. Unfortunately, snapped my wrist and I was out for the season. But again, I knew we were in a good position. I knew that, you know, all I could do was every time I went to training, keep a positive mind frame, try and help the boys that were there, because ultimately we're in it as a team. And ultimately when we won as a team as well. Even though I didn't play that night, or there's 35 blokes that go into a team, and then all the staff as well. So, and you know, I'm really proud to say that what we did that year really had a massive impact on the community. You know, you see South, you always see South. Trust me, 6 or 7 years ago when you walked in the street, you wouldn't see many South hats or jerseys and stuff like that when we're running 14 to 15. But these days, people are proud to wear that jersey. People are proud to wear the hat, and I think it's, you know, it's a credit to you know, a lot of the hard work that went on behind the scenes, and going through them tough times to ultimately, you know, going through them tough times. When you're going through them tough times, you don't think to yourself, oh gee, we're going to be winning a comp in 7 years' time. You're just sort of worried about what's happening at the time, and ultimately we just kept pushing day by day. We stuck together. Obviously, we recruited some new players, which also helps, a new coach, but ultimately we got to that end goal of winning the premiership. And that was my dream as a kid. You know, was to play one NRL game was the dream. If I played one NRL game, if I died the next day, I would have been stoked. You know, it wouldn't have worried me. And then once I did play, the goal was to win a premiership, or at least be involved with a premiership. And I, you know, won a premiership in Melbourne, and then and got the opportunity with South to win it, you know, as a squad. So what I try and do now is I try to use my experiences to try and guide younger kids. I go to, you know, back home where I'm from, we see a lot of, obviously, the biggest issue I find is that, you know, the lack of opportunities for these young kids. And you know, the lack of a positive adult role model for a lot of these young kids. So obviously the kids that go through primary school, they get to ages, you know, 11 through to 15, and that's where, you know, the issues start, because they finish school, they got nothing to do. They get 12 of them in a course. They get 12 kids qualified in a certificate, and there's one job at the end of it. And then they go into another course, and then there's 12 kids again, and they're one job. So by the time they do the third course, they think to themselves, well, maybe I'm not good enough to get this job, or maybe this is not, you know, this is not for me. So they get to that point where they're like, well, what do I do? You know, so it's what we try and do now, what we're trying to work when I do my stuff with South Keys and with Kari, is to, you know, try and align ourselves with other partners, other corporate partners that can provide some opportunities for these kids, because you know, I see what good kids these young Indigenous kids are, and if we're not putting them through the right pathways, moving forward, it's going to be very tough for a lot of these kids. And obviously, you know, a lot of these kids are going through a lot more stuff than just the general non-Indigenous population, and especially in these remote country towns. You know, we do oral health stuff in Walgett, Burke, Kempsey, Port Macquarie, and you see, you know, a lot of these kids haven't been to see a dentist 3 or 4 years, and that might only seem like a small thing, but if that's not getting looked after, then later on down the track, something else is gonna pop up. So when we go to these communities, we try to install resilience into all of these kids, install belief into a lot of these kids, because, you know, I was in the same situation as a lot of these kids were. My situation was nowhere near, you know, as bad as a lot of the other kids. I had great support, my mum and my dad, and also my nan, who were always there for me. But they installed that resilience into me, that belief. And ultimately, it was up to myself as well. You know, I didn't want to keep living that life that I was living for, you know, 10 or so years of my life. And rugby league was a big out for me. I wasn't as talented as a lot of other guys that I played with or against when I was coming through, but I made sure that I got up. I trained harder than them. I made sure that I was there before training. I made sure I was the last person to leave. I made sure that I gave myself every single opportunity to make it to the NRL. I was not the best NRL player, trust me. I think I ended up playing around 100 NRL games. I had a lot of injuries throughout my career, but again, I think the biggest thing that I'll take out of my rugby league career was that because I did sustain, I had 4 ankle reconstructions, a knee reco, a shoulder reco, but every time I suffered one of them injuries long term, I was always able to come back and make it back into the NRL team. And I think that's one thing that I'll take out of it. I'll never be a Jonathan Thurston or an Inglis or a James Roberts or a Latrell Mitchell, but I'll be proud that I got everything I could out of myself. If it was 100 games, great. You know, if it was 1 game, great. But I knew that I had no regrets when I left. And I think that's the biggest thing is that, you know, if I can be proud of what I did, and then now use that, what I did, to try and maybe install that into some of our future kids coming through. Because if we can create a lot more positive role models, or a lot more future leaders, or a lot more doctors, or a lot more nurses, or a lot more teachers, it's going to stem the flow moving forward, so that in 10, 15, 20, 30 years time, you know, we're not seeing these, you know, these 40% incarceration rates or 60% incarceration rates, and we make up 3% of the population. You know, that's where we've really got to look at, you know, changing it for our kids, and putting together the right pathways so that there is ultimately, when 12 kids go for a course, there is 12 jobs. You know, there's not 1 job. You know, and you know, if the kids do miss out on the jobs, what actually happens to these kids? So that's something that I'm very passionate about. That's something that I'll keep doing. I'm a full-time real estate agent as well, so I just juggle that in with my time. But it's something I'm really passionate about. In regards to, I think, in regards to a lot of the people that are here today, you know, you guys are the guys on the ground that are working with these kids or working in these organisations, and you know, I take my hat off to you guys, because I know that how difficult it is, and I know, you know, sometimes the ups and the downs, and you know, the emotional attachment that you put sometimes with your job, and that you want to see a lot of these young kids, you know, make it something of themselves, or something really frustrates you and you take it home with you, and you know, it's a full credit to yourself that you keep going and you keep pushing through, because again, if my goal is to say, if I can always try and change 1 kid, then I've done my job. If 1 kid, if I go back to a community 3 years later, and that 1 kid says, oh, you know what, I'm doing my homework now, I'm going to school, then I say to myself, well, then me coming out here was worth it, you know. So thanks very much for allowing me to speak today. I want to congratulate everyone that's here today, and wish everyone the best. So thanks very much.
Beau, as unkindly explained by Madam President, I am the executive in the South Sydney Tragic. I was really excited to see your name, because I know your career as a football player and one of those people that's cheered from the stands for you, but what you've done today isn't about your football career. To hear you speak like that and speak about matters of such importance, you have become, since being a football player, clearly a very, very valuable ambassador for the people and the charities and the organisations you work for, and the people they serve and the kids they serve. So on behalf of the PSA and the people here, not only thank you for speaking to us today, but thank you for the work you're doing, because obviously the community is richer for it, because the way you spoke today gives us all some very powerful messages, both for people in the field and all of us going forward. So thanks, Beau. That's really appreciated.